On her first time, he lost control and couldn't stop all night, bound by her innocent charm, powerful introduction. There are moments in life that arrive quietly, yet leave an echo so powerful that nothing feels the same afterward. A single encounter, a single night, a single moment of closeness can awaken emotions that were once hidden beneath the surface. Sometimes it is not the perfection of a person that captures someone completely. It is their innocence, their softness, the way they smile without realizing the effect they have, the way their eyes reveal emotions they are too shy to say aloud. And sometimes, when two people share a deeply intimate and meaningful connection for the first time, the experience can become so emotionally overwhelming that one person feels completely spellbound by the other. This is the story of a man who never expected to lose himself so completely in a moment. He may have believed he understood attraction. He may have thought he knew the difference between desire and love, between passion and emotional connection. But then she entered his world with a presence that was impossible to explain. There was something about her that felt different. She did not need to demand attention. She did not need to become someone else to be desired. Her natural charm, her nervousness, her tenderness, and the quiet innocence in the way she carried herself created a feeling that went far beyond ordinary attraction. As the night unfolded, he found himself unable to ignore the powerful emotions rising inside him. It was not simply about physical desire. It was about the realization that the person beside him had somehow reached a place inside his heart that he had not expected anyone to touch. Every small expression, every moment of closeness, every glimpse of vulnerability made him feel more captivated. The hours seemed to disappear, and with every passing moment, he became more aware that this experience would remain with him long after the night had ended. Because sometimes the most unforgettable connection is not created by trying to be irresistible. Sometimes it happens when someone allows themselves to be real, when innocence meets passion, when vulnerability meets desire, and when two people stop hiding behind the versions of themselves they show the world, something powerful can happen. A moment becomes a memory. Attraction becomes emotional attachment. And what began as curiosity can transform into a feeling so intense that it becomes impossible to forget. Perhaps that is why this story is about more than one unforgettable night. It is about the mysterious power of genuine connection. It is about how a person's softness can awaken a fierce desire to protect, cherish, and remain close to them. It is about the moment someone realizes that they are no longer simply fascinated, they are emotionally captured. And as he looked at her, overwhelmed by everything he was feeling, one truth became impossible to deny. There was something about her innocent charm that had completely taken hold of him. Tonight, we explore that powerful moment when attraction becomes overwhelming, when emotional connection deepens beyond expectation, and when one unforgettable experience leaves a memory that refuses to fade. Because sometimes the person who changes everything does not even realize the power they hold. And sometimes the moment you least expect to lose control of your emotions is the very moment you discover that someone has quietly captured your heart forever. The power of innocent attraction. There is a kind of attraction that cannot be manufactured, rehearsed, or forced. It does not come from trying too hard to be desirable, saying all the right things, or creating a perfect image for someone else. Sometimes the strongest attraction begins in the smallest and most unexpected details: a shy smile, a nervous glance, a quiet laugh, a moment of hesitation, or the simple honesty of someone allowing themselves to be seen exactly as they are. This is the power of innocent attraction. It is the kind of presence that can quietly enter someone's heart and completely change the way they feel. He may have expected a simple moment of attraction, something temporary that would fade with time, but there was something about her that caught him completely off guard. Her charm was not loud. It did not demand attention. Instead, it drew him closer without effort, making him want to understand her, protect her, and remain in the moment just a little longer. What captivated him most was the authenticity behind her presence. She was not trying to create a fantasy. She was simply experiencing the moment with all the emotions that came naturally with it. There may have been nervousness, curiosity, tenderness, and vulnerability, and those qualities made the connection feel more real. Suddenly, he was no longer focused on the outside-out world. His attention was completely captured by the person in front of him and the emotions passing between them. Time seemed to move differently because genuine connection has a way of making everything else disappear. When two people feel emotionally safe enough to let their guards down, even silence can feel meaningful. That is what made her so unforgettable. It was not about perfection, it was about presence. Every small expression seemed to carry meaning. Every glance felt like it revealed another part of her personality. The more genuine she appeared, the more deeply he found himself drawn in. He began to realize that true attraction is often connected to emotion. Physical beauty may capture attention for a moment, but emotional authenticity has the power to remain in the mind long after the moment has passed. Her innocent charm created an atmosphere he could not easily escape because it touched something deeper than ordinary desire. As the connection intensified, he found himself overwhelmed by feelings he had not planned for. He had entered the moment believing he understood what would happen, but emotions have a way of changing every expectation. The more present he became, the more fascinated he felt. He was spellbound not because she was trying to control his attention, but because her natural vulnerability made him feel that he was witnessing something rare and deeply personal. In that moment, he did not want to rush through the experience. He wanted to remain emotionally connected, to remember every feeling, and to hold on to the closeness that had unexpectedly developed between them. And perhaps that is the secret behind innocent attraction. It reminds us that the strongest connections are not always built through performance. Sometimes the person who captures your heart is the one who does not realize they are doing anything extraordinary. They simply arrive with an energy that feels genuine, soft, and impossible to imitate. Her charm stayed with him because it was connected to who she truly was. Long after the moment had passed, he would remember the way she made him feel. Not merely the excitement of attraction, but the deeper realization that something about her had reached him emotionally. That is why innocent attraction can be so powerful. It does not simply make someone look twice. It can make them pause, become emotionally present, and realize that they are experiencing something they may never be able to recreate in exactly the same way. And in the end, what held his attention was not just the moment itself, but the unforgettable feeling of being completely captivated by someone who had no idea just how powerful her natural charm truly was. When desire becomes emotional surrender, there are moments when a person enters an experience believing they are completely in control of their emotions, only to discover that the connection unfolding before them is far more powerful than they expected. At first, he may have believed that attraction was simple. He thought he understood desire, chemistry, and the excitement of being drawn toward another person. But something changed when he found himself deeply connected to her. What began as fascination slowly became something more intense, more personal, and more emotionally overwhelming. It was no longer simply about being attracted to her. He began to feel completely absorbed by her presence. The more time passed, the more difficult it became to separate the physical excitement of the moment from the powerful emotions beginning to rise inside him. He had not planned to become so affected. He had not expected to care so deeply about every expression on her face or every change in her emotions. Yet somehow, without even realizing when it happened, he stopped resisting what he felt. That is when desire begins to transform into emotional surrender. It happens when attraction is no longer only about what someone sees, but about how another person makes them feel. Her presence awakened something unexpected within him. Perhaps it was her vulnerability. Perhaps it was the trust she allowed him to see. Perhaps it was simply the realization that beneath all the excitement was a real person with real emotions, fears, hopes, and tenderness. Suddenly, the experience became more meaningful than he could have imagined. He was no longer simply caught in the intensity of the moment. He was emotionally present, paying attention, wanting to understand what she was feeling, and becoming increasingly captivated by the connection they shared. The more genuine the connection became, the more he felt his emotional defenses begin to disappear. People often believe they can control how deeply they become attached. They tell themselves they will remain detached, that they will enjoy a moment without allowing it to affect their heart. But emotions do not always follow the rules we create for them. Sometimes, one person arrives at exactly the right moment and awakens feelings that have been silent for a long time. Her innocent charm made it difficult for him to remain distant because it did not feel like an act. It felt real, and authenticity has a way of breaking through even the strongest emotional walls. As the hours passed, he found himself wanting the moment to continue, not simply because of the excitement, but because he did not want to lose the feeling of closeness. He became aware of how completely absorbed he was. The outside world no longer seemed important. His attention kept returning to her, the way she looked at him, the emotions she could not always put into words, and the quiet moments that made the connection feel even stronger. In those moments, he understood that surrender does not always mean weakness. Sometimes emotional surrender means allowing yourself to experience something honestly instead of pretending that it does not matter. This was the unexpected truth he discovered. The more he stopped trying to control his feelings, the more deeply he understood them. He was spellbound because the experience had become personal. It was no longer just a memory being created. It was an emotional realization unfolding in real time. He could feel that something inside him was changing. The person he had expected to simply enjoy a moment with had become someone whose presence affected him on a much deeper level. And perhaps that is what makes emotional surrender so powerful. It reminds us that the heart cannot always be controlled by logic. Sometimes attraction opens a door, but emotional connection is what makes a person want to stay. He may have entered the night believing he was in complete control, but by the end he realized that her presence had changed the entire experience. It was her softness, authenticity, and the unexpected depth of their connection that made him let go of every expectation. And once he allowed himself to truly feel, he understood that he had not simply experienced desire. He had experienced the overwhelming power of being emotionally captivated by someone he never expected to affect him so deeply, spellbound by her authenticity. There is something incredibly powerful about a person who does not have to pretend to be someone they are not. In a world where so many people feel pressure to impress, compete, and create an image that will capture attention, authenticity can become one of the most magnetic qualities a person possesses. That was the energy she carried without even realizing it. She was not trying to create a perfect moment or perform a version of herself that she thought he wanted to see. Her charm came from something much deeper. It came from her natural reactions, her quiet emotions, her moments of nervousness, and the sincerity that appeared in the smallest details. And the more he noticed those details, the more completely captivated he became. At first, he may not have understood why her presence affected him so strongly. There were many things he could have focused on, but what continued to draw him closer was the feeling that she was real. She did not seem rehearsed. Her smiles were spontaneous. Her expressions changed with her emotions. Sometimes she seemed confident, and at other moments her vulnerability showed through. That mixture of strength and softness created something he could not easily explain. Every time he thought he understood her, another small detail revealed a different side of her personality, making him even more curious about the person she truly was. That is the extraordinary power of authenticity. It creates fascination because there is nothing artificial about it. When someone allows themselves to be seen honestly, they become unforgettable in a way that no carefully constructed image can achieve. He found himself paying attention to everything, not because he was trying to analyze her, but because her presence naturally held his focus. A quiet glance could make him pause. A simple laugh could remain in his mind. Even the moments when she said nothing seemed to carry a kind of emotional meaning. The connection was not built only through words. It was built through presence. As the experience continued, he began to feel as though time had slowed down. The outside world became less important because he was completely absorbed in the connection unfolding between them. What fascinated him was not the idea of perfection, but the beauty of her imperfections. She did not have to know exactly what to say. She did not have to appear fearless every second. Her humanity was part of what made her so captivating. There was something deeply touching about watching someone allow their guard to fall and trusting the moment enough to simply be themselves. This authenticity awakened a different kind of attraction within him. It was no longer only excitement, it became admiration. He began to appreciate the qualities that could not be seen at first glance: the gentleness in her personality, the emotions behind her eyes, and the quiet strength hidden beneath her softness. He realized that the people who affect us most deeply are often those who make us feel that we are experiencing something genuine. There is a difference between being entertained by someone's appearance and being emotionally moved by their presence. She had crossed that invisible line without trying, and that was why he became spellbound. He was not captivated by an illusion. He was captivated by the person standing before him, with all her innocence, uncertainty, warmth, and authenticity. Every passing moment seemed to deepen the impression she was leaving on him. He could not simply dismiss the connection because it had reached beyond surface attraction. Something about her made him feel emotionally present in a way he had not expected. In the end, what made her unforgettable was not an attempt to capture his attention. She captured it by being completely herself, her natural charm, her genuine emotions, and the quiet honesty in her presence created a memory that stayed with him long after the moment had passed. He may have entered the experience believing that he understood what attraction felt like, but she showed him something different. She reminded him that the deepest fascination often begins when a person stops performing and simply allows their true self to shine. And as he looked at her, completely absorbed by the authenticity he saw before him, he realized that sometimes the most powerful charm is the one that never has to try at all. A night that changes everything. Some moments enter your life without warning and leave you completely different from the person you were before they happened. You may believe that you understand your feelings, that you know exactly where your boundaries are, and that a single experience could never have the power to change the way you see another person. But then someone comes along and, without even trying, turns an ordinary moment into something unforgettable. That was what happened to him. What he expected to be a simple experience slowly became something emotionally powerful, something that stayed with him long after the night had ended. It was not only the intensity of the connection that affected him, it was the realization that he was beginning to see her differently. Every passing moment seemed to reveal another layer of emotion, another reason why this experience felt unlike anything he had imagined. At the beginning, he may have focused on the excitement of being close to her, but as time moved forward, something deeper began to take place. He started noticing the little things: the way her expressions changed when she felt comfortable, the softness in her voice, the moments when she became quiet, as if she were lost in her own thoughts. These details might have seemed small, but they carried a powerful meaning, because they made her feel real to him. She was no longer simply someone he was attracted to. She became someone whose emotions mattered. Suddenly, he found himself paying attention not just to what he was feeling, but to what she might be experiencing too. That is often the moment when attraction begins to transform into something more meaningful. Physical chemistry can create excitement, but emotional connection creates memory. When two people share a moment of genuine closeness, they often remember the feeling long after they forget the details. And for him, the strongest memory was not simply the intensity of the night. It was the emotional atmosphere surrounding it. There was trust, there was vulnerability, there was the feeling of two people allowing themselves to be present without constantly worrying about what would happen next. As the hours passed, he realized that he did not want the connection to feel temporary. Something inside him had shifted. Before this experience, he may have believed that he could easily separate attraction from emotion, but she had quietly challenged that belief. Her innocent charm made him see the experience through a different lens. He began to understand that what made someone unforgettable was not always how intensely they captured your attention in one moment. Sometimes it was how deeply they remained in your thoughts afterward. The night became a turning point because it forced him to confront feelings he had not expected to have. He could no longer pretend that nothing had changed. Her presence had created an emotional impact that followed him into the days that came next. He might find himself remembering her smile unexpectedly, replaying conversations in his mind, or wondering what she was thinking and feeling. The memory did not disappear when the moment ended. Instead, it seemed to grow stronger because distance often gives emotions time to reveal themselves. Perhaps that is what truly changes everything. The realization that a person has become more important to you than you originally intended. He may have entered the experience without expecting attachment, but emotional connection rarely asks for permission. It develops quietly. One meaningful moment becomes another, and before long you realize that someone has found a permanent place in your thoughts. And so, that night became more than a memory. It became a moment of realization. He discovered that genuine closeness could awaken emotions that logic could not easily explain. What stayed with him was her authenticity, her softness, and the feeling that for a brief period of time, nothing else in the world mattered as much as the connection they shared. By the time the experience had ended, he understood that something had changed within him. He could not return to seeing her as simply another person in his life. She had become connected to a memory, an emotion, and a feeling that he would carry with him long afterward. Sometimes one powerful experience does not just give you something to remember. Sometimes it changes the way you feel, the way you see someone, and the direction your heart quietly begins to move, the memory that refuses to fade. Some experiences end when the moment is over, but others continue living quietly in the mind long after everything has become silent. This was the kind of memory he could not easily leave behind. When the night finally became a memory, he expected life to return to normal. He expected the intensity to fade, the emotions to settle, and the experience to become just another chapter in his life. But that was not what happened. Instead, something about her remained with him. It was not simply one moment or one conversation. It was the feeling she had created within him, her innocent charm, her natural vulnerability, and the authenticity she carried had become connected to a memory that seemed to grow more powerful with time. He began to understand that the most unforgettable people are not always the ones who make the biggest effort to be remembered. Sometimes a person stays with you because of the smallest things. A particular smile can suddenly appear in your thoughts. A quiet expression can return to your mind when you least expect it. The sound of their laughter, the way they looked at you, or even a moment of silence shared between you can become permanently connected to an emotion. That was what happened with her. He could move through an ordinary day and suddenly remember something about her that brought the entire experience rushing back. What made the memory so powerful was that it was connected to more than attraction. Attraction can fade when the excitement disappears, but emotional connection often leaves a deeper mark. Somewhere between the intensity of the experience and the quiet moments they shared, he had allowed himself to feel something genuine. He had seen a side of her that felt personal and real, and in return, he had experienced emotions he had not expected to reveal. That is why the memory refused to fade. It represented a moment when both excitement and emotional vulnerability existed together. As time passed, he may have found himself comparing other experiences to the feeling he had shared with her. Not because everything had to be identical, but because genuine connection changes your understanding of what you truly value. He had discovered that what stayed with him most was not perfection. It was sincerity. He remembered her natural reactions, the quiet tenderness in her personality, and the feeling that she was simply being herself. Her charm had been powerful precisely because it did not feel calculated. She had not needed to chase his attention or convince him to be fascinated by her. Somehow, just by being present, she had created an impression that became difficult to replace. There is something almost mysterious about the way certain memories attach themselves to the heart. You cannot always decide which moments will become unforgettable. Sometimes the moments you expect to remember forever slowly disappear, while a single unexpected connection remains vivid for years. Perhaps that is because the heart remembers feelings differently than the mind remembers events. The mind may forget the exact details, but the heart remembers how someone made you feel. And whenever he thought of her, that feeling returned, the sense of being completely present, emotionally captivated, and surprised by the depth of the connection. The memory also changed the way he understood her. She was no longer simply a person connected to one intense experience. She had become someone whose presence represented a turning point. Her innocence reminded him that softness could be powerful. Her vulnerability showed him that authenticity could be magnetic. And her ability to simply be herself taught him that the strongest attraction often happens when no one is trying to force it. In the end, what he carried with him was not merely the memory of a night. It was the realization that some people leave an imprint because they awaken something inside us that had been waiting to be felt. Her charm had captured his attention, but her authenticity had captured something deeper. The moment eventually ended, the hours passed, and life continued, yet the feeling remained. And perhaps that is the true meaning of an unforgettable connection. Even after someone leaves the room, even after the moment becomes part of the past, a small part of them continues to live in the emotions they awakened. For him, her memory refused to fade because she had become more than a passing experience. She had become a feeling he could never quite forget.